When you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you much. We'll talk to Dr. Troy. Thanks for being here today. You're very educational. You've studied the impact of the health care law, and there are a lot of reasons why the cost of health care is up: the aging population, new technologies, and whatnot. But I'd like to give just a general, how are employers dealing with the costs, and what alternatives are employers experimenting with to deal with the costs?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. We work primarily and study primarily large employers, and large employers are looking at significant alterations to their healthcare offerings. In response to the excise tax, they are reducing the value of their healthcare offerings so as to maintain or remain under the threshold so that they don't trigger the excise tax when it comes online in 2018. In terms of the overall costs to large employers, we found that the ACA has an impact of a marginal costs of about $5,000 per employee over a 10-year period. And that is leading them to rethink what they're doing with healthcare as well. So some of they're looking at a variety of alternatives. There's been some movement towards private exchanges, although I think that has slowed down a little bit at this point. And I get the sense from employers that, first of all, they feel that there's an uncertainty out there in large part because of ACA delays and questions in the Supreme Court, so they're not sure what's going to happen. So I get the sense that employers are looking for something new. They're looking for some kind of future state, but they have not yet decided on what that's going to be. Okay, now correct me if I'm wrong. When we look at the cost to the employer, we look only at his premiums, not at the cost to the employee, right? So we don't, in encouraging one type of plan or another, the way this Affordable Care Act was designed, it was only looking at it from the perspective of the employer, not the employee, right, as far as cost. Yes, and so we looked, that's why we did this study about the marginal costs of the ACA to large employers. These are costs over and above the traditional costs of health care that are imposed by the new law. Right, so correct me if I'm wrong. Under this plan, we are encouraging employers to put in things like big deductibles, which just may hammer their employer, particularly lower paid employees. I mean, a lot of times these people who set up these plans are very, wealthy in their own right, but, you encourage like $5,000 deductible, that sort of thing. Yeah, we're definitely seeing employers move towards these high deductible plans or towards more cost sharing, which does impose additional costs on the employees, and it raises questions of affordability of employer-sponsored care as well. Right. I'm not familiar with all around the country. I know in my area what's going to happen is you have bigger deductibles, you're going to wind up having employees dig into their 401ks and that sort of thing. Is that something you're going to see around the country, you think? What we're finding is that there are already about 13 to 14 million people in employer-sponsored care who, if you look at the combination of deductibles and premiums, they're over the ACA threshold of what's deemed to be affordability, which is 9.5% of income. Okay. I'll give you one more question, a chance to respond. Earlier today we saw a couple charts that were presented. You've seen these things, and you haven't had a chance to respond to them, and I thought, well, I had my 5 minutes. If I have any of my 5 minutes left, I'd give you a chance to respond. Well, I appreciate that opportunity. There's a chart from Kaiser that shows that the increase in premiums has decreased over time. It compares the 2001 to 2010 period and the 2011 to 2015 period. Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, the costs are still rising for employers faster than the cost of goods and services, faster than productivity, and faster than GDP growth. So the costs are still rising faster. Second of all, CBO did an analysis that suggested that some of the abatement in cost increases in the past few years, and remember, the costs are still growing faster than inflation, but some of the abatement is due, a large part of it is due to the recession, and it cannot all be attributed or even mostly attributed to the ACA.